Apologies, folks, for the delay in getting going. We had some serious IT issue problems regarding connecting and access issues. We had to find an alternative way of delivering the address, so we found one. So, okay, we get going now shortly. Good afternoon. I trust this broadcast is received well, and that all you and yours are in good health. Due to the current exceptional circumstances we are all in, this year's 1916 National Centenary Committee's Easter event has been cancelled. This is in the best interest of public health. However, the committee still have an important message to deliver, so we're going to engage modern IT methods in order to do so. It is my honour, Damien Farrell, an independent Socialist Republican, housing and community activist, to do so on behalf of the National Centenary Committee. Those whom we honour on this Easter Monday are the fulcrum upon which the entire struggle for sovereignty and social justice in this country pivots. An essential balance required to achieve legitimacy of purpose and the framework for revolutionary social change were the core ingredients of the 1916 Easter Rising. The insurrection was not only an armed expression of Irish sovereignty, it was also a cutting-edge tutorial for future generations on how to conduct themselves in the revolutionary tradition. The potency of those events at that Easter week resided in their clarity of intent. The choice the insurgents offered the Irish people had a dynamic simplicity. The Irish people are, as by rights, a sovereign people, or we are nothing more than a regional administrative area within the British Empire. That choice remains the same for the Irish people of today. The proclamation was an evolutionary voice derived from previous expressions of our revolutionary forefathers, those whose ideas mapped the direction of the Republican struggle throughout our history. The great revolutionary period of a century ago would not have happened without 1916, but that great period was subverted because the core ethos of 1916 was abandoned at the negotiations table. The proclamation was addressed to the Irish people, Irish men and Irish women, and it was to the people of Ireland that Irish revolutionaries turned to give democratic legitimacy to that republic proclaimed. To seek a mandate from the people is as arduous and essential as to face the military might of the occupying power. Democracy is at the heart of sovereignty, its denial is at the heart of armed conflict. The 1918 general election was a peaceful and democratic expression of Irish sovereignty. At a time when the advocates of home rule had urged 50,000 Irishmen to their violent deaths in support of the Crown's dominion over Ireland, Irish separatists secured the peaceful and democratic endorsement of a free, sovereign Ireland. And the establishment of Dáil Éireann in January 1919 represented the functional reality of the Irish Republic and placed the ideals of 1916 above the aspirational and firmly in the realm of day-to-day reality. But this was only the first step. The totality of sovereignty and independence made it clear that for the Republic to function for the betterment of its people, there were many other national questions that had to be addressed, and it was the impatient business of Dáil Éireann to set itself to this task. On January 21st, 1919, the Declaration of Independence spoke to the world of Ireland's status as a sovereign country amongst the free nations of the world. That which was proclaimed on the steps of GPO was now made democratically manifest. On that same day, the democratic programme of Dáil Éireann set before the Irish people the foundation stone for the revolutionary social policy. It declared, "It shall be the first duty of the government of the Republic to make provisions for the physical, mental and spiritual well-being of the children, to secure that no child should suffer hunger or cold from lack of food, clothing or shelter, but that all shall be provided with the means and facilities requisite for their proper education and training as citizens of a free and Gaelic Ireland." More than a century later, this state, which lauds itself as the legitimate successor of that first law, is engrossed in continued dereliction of that basic commitment. In a parallel act on that same date, volunteers of the Irish Republican Army engaged an RIC escort, a Salahead Beg, killing two of their escort and seizing weapons and ordnance to prosecute a war of liberation against the British Empire. But yet again, 100 years later, the root cause that conflicts remains unresolved. And in a move which can only perpetuate that conflict, the state has sought to sanitise the role of British forces deployed to deny the national and sovereign rights of the Irish people. The Royal Irish Constabulary was the British government's principal agency to enforce this right in Ireland. Since its founding, it has established itself as firmly pro-establishment, demonstrating a clear relish in quelling all aspects of dissent and protest. Agitation on tenants and workers' rights were viciously suppressed, as were those efforts to secure permanent constitutional change. They enforced the will of the industrious and the landlord. They beat striking workers and oversaw the evictions of hundreds. The Royal Irish Constabulary were and still are the enemies of the Irish people. As the forces of the Irish Republic gained political and military control over the infrastructure of our country, the British government responded with historical infamy as they prosecuted a campaign of murder and terror against the Irish people. To this end, they sought to bolster the resources of the RIC by recruiting ex-British soldiers into a paramilitary force which became known as the Black and Tans. In tandem with this force, a so-called counter-soldier unit of the Royal Irish Constabulary was also established, comprising of former British Army officers and designated as the auxiliary division of the RIC. Having declared an illegal assembly, the British government unleashed these combined forces against the Irish people with a clear instruction to initiate a campaign of terror, murder, reprisal, destruction and brutality. The British contempt for the democratic will of the Irish people was further demonstrated by the willful murder of Thomas McCurtain, Lord Mayor of Cork, at the hands of these forces. No amount of historical revisionism can exonerate the criminal role and deeds of those individuals and the forces they belong to. The only monument they deserve in this centenary year of their establishment is the ruthless and continuous historical exposure of their war crimes in Ireland. Those crimes are too numerous to list here today. They are well documented for students of history and political commentators and activists alike to determine both their historical and contemporary relevance. In honour and remembrance of all their victims, we reference perhaps one of their most despicable atrocities, the Bloody Sunday attack on the patrons of Croke Park. As the IRA prosecuted its counterintelligence campaign with the assassination of British agents, British paramilitary forces descended on Croke Park to seek reprisal. 14 spectators of the Dublin versus Tipperary football game were murdered that day. Those people were Jane Boyle, aged 26 from Dublin, James Burke, aged 44 from Dublin, Daniel Carroll, aged 30 from Tipperary, Michael Feary, aged 40, also from Dublin, Michael Hogan, aged 24, Tipperary, Tom Hogan, aged 19, Limerick, James Matthews, aged 38, Dublin, Patrick O'Dowd, aged 57, Dublin, Jerome O'Leary, aged 10, Dublin, William Robinson, aged 11, from Dublin, Tom Ryan, aged 27, from Wexford, John William Scott, aged 14, from Dublin, James Teagan, aged 26, Tipperary, and Joe Trainer, aged 21, from Dublin. These are the people of our history, who as a nation we are duly bound to honour. These and countless others of their kind, victims of the savagery of the British Empire, are a testimony to the legitimacy of the Republican cause. The murderers of our people can never be elevated to a position of parity with those Irishmen and Irish women who fought to remove them from our country. Our commitment to them in the here and now is to secure the completion of Emmett's epitaph. And if we are proven to be able to fulfil that task, then at least let us ensure that we have written a progressive history. Our part in that process can only be forged through contemporary ideas of our own, so that the inherited narrative of Irish republicanism can speak to today's generation. And it is with this generation that Republicans and Socialists must meaningfully engage. Their essential needs are the route map to the creation of our policy platform to comprehensively address those needs. We cannot say to the Irish people that social justice can only be realised once abstract eventualities somehow come to pass. A republic must serve its people, and in its absence, Republicans must become those servants as the surest way to establish that republic. The homeless need homes, the indebted need relief, the sick need medical treatment, the elderly need security, and our youth need opportunity. Ireland's national freedom would be meaningless if its citizens were prisoners of a governing mindset, which viewed them as nothing more than economic commodities, and this is precisely the state of affairs that we lay on today. The current housing crisis is not due to a shortage of bricks and mortar, but due to a deeply flawed and fundamentally unjust precept that profit from private property is a superior right to the essential needs of our people as a whole. How can we stand idly by when the vast majority of new homes built are sold to corporate entities for the sole purpose of profit, whilst tens of thousands of our people, families and individuals alike continue to be homeless? Can we discern any realistic difference between those evicted by the RIC at the behest of absentee landlords and those evicted by the Gardaí and private security firms at the behest of absentee vulture funds? Should we forget the names of those homeless people who perish sleeping rough on our streets because the narrative of their death is too uncomfortable for those who cause it and too damning for those who fail to unite to prevent it? If we forget the dead of the famine, of the poorhouse, of the lockout, of the occupation, of the church, or of our own neglect, then we rightly stand accused of killing them the second time. In this current pandemic crisis, we have seen private hospitals taken under public control of a sort in order to offer maximum assistance to those affected. We applaud this move. We recognise its logic. But if our housing crisis is no less deserving of such decisive action, given the appalling death toll that homelessness is inflicting upon our people annually, how many viable dwellings around the country remain empty, whilst families languish in endless temporary accommodation uncertain of what tomorrow holds? When will we see the end of the vicious cycle of billions in government rent supplements going to private landlords, as opposed to utilising such financial resources to provide sustainable public housing? This crisis can be resolved if there exists the will and moral integrity to do so. Those who say the state cannot afford to provide social housing are those who have a vested interest in profiting from it. This is the mindset which we must defeat. In the midst of this current crisis, we urge all our people to observe medical guidelines, stay at home where possible, and take care of the most vulnerable in your communities, the older and those with underlying issues. Such a crisis challenges the very fabric of our society across the 32 counties. There is a collective responsibility in all of us to face into this challenge, to ensure that we come through this with the least loss of life as possible. But make no mistake, this is a watershed in the development of this country. What emerges from the other side will be a completely different Ireland, and that Ireland will owe its due to the people of no property. Those minimum wage and low paid workers who took to the front line, took the greatest risks and ultimately prevailed. The spirit of 1916 belongs to such as those. Theirs is the courage that stood fast in the GPO, and our debt to them can be no less than the establishment of the Irish Republic envisaged in the proclamation. If we choose to call ourselves Republicans, if we describe ourselves as socialists, then the merit of those claims must be measured by our ability to impact positively on issues such as this. Noble failures will not provide sustainable housing. Green and red platitudes will not end the hospital trolley scandal. Nothing will come our way unless we go out and fight for it. We done so in 1916. It is our turn now. Thank you for being patient, and happy Easter. Everybody keep safe and stay home, wash your hands, and look after the most vulnerable in our society.